Over the past few years, Tess and I have tossed around many movies that we might like to discuss on the podcast. You may have noticed we don't do a whole lot of scary ones. That's on me. I have a hard time with horror or truly scary stuff, which is probably why we haven't discussed any movies based on Stephen King's work, even though both of us have tremendous respect for him and how he treats the women in his stories. I think filmmakers try very hard to scare us. They think it sells. And many moviegoers do love to be scared. Not me. Today's film, while admittedly scary in its most basic premise, which is a child is lost in a world of monsters, never once made me feel anxious. And that's not because it's animated. So it wasn't because I didn't think it was real. I think it has to do with the respect and love with which the characters are treated by each other and by the filmmaker, how they interact with each other. There's really only one bad guy in the entire film, even though it is full of monsters and creepy things beyond our understanding. So let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to Woman Inherits the Earth, a mother-daughter podcast about the representation of women in movies and television. I am Tess Adair, a writer and the author of the paranormal mystery series The Karanzan Chronicles, and Beth's daughter.
And I am Beth Von Baron, Tessa's mother and also a writer. In the podcast today, we are discussing Spirited Away. Spirited Away is an animated film directed by Hayao Miyazaki. He also wrote the original story and screenplay, and he drew a lot of the film. It was released in 2001. The animation production on the film began in 1995 with 2 years of actual filming. So it took about 6 years to produce this film. Miyazaki says he made the film specifically for 10-year-old girls, which I thought was interesting. Spirited Away is Japan's highest grossing film ever. It grossed more than Titanic in Japan and was the first foreign film in history to open in the U.S., having already made more than $200 million. It won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film.
I'm going to do a brief summary. I'm going to be very specific about the intro of the film and then much less specific about the rest of it. Spirited Away is kind of a difficult film to summarize because it's kind of a series of relatively small but important events that all lead into each other, so you can't really leave anything out without something else not making sense. So I've opted to just do a very detailed summary of the opening that I think has a lot of details that seem small but are important later on or are foreshadowing something. So here we go. A young Chihiro and her parents are moving to a new house in a new town when her father seems to take a wrong turn, leading them down a grassy, unpaved road. Chihiro notices what appear to be little houses on the side of the road, which her mother explains are for the spirit guardians. Though the road keeps getting worse, her father presses on until they reach a red building with a tunnel in the middle of it, which her father describes as a gate. Despite Chihiro's protestations, her parents walk through the tunnel and come out to what appears to be an abandoned amusement park. They cross a seemingly inconsequential trail of rocks with a very small amount of water running through it. Then they find a stall full of food, though no people around, and her parents begin to eat the food. Chihiro feels increasingly uneasy and continues to explore instead of eating with them. She comes upon a beautiful red bridge leading to a strange building, which we later find out is a bathhouse, and starts to move toward it, but a young man named Haku appears and warns her away, telling her that she needs to get back across the river before sundown. The sun is already starting to set when he says this. She flees to look for her parents, but when she finds them, they have been turned into pigs. She doesn't believe this at first, but eventually she does come to believe it. The sun sets before she can get out of the town, and she finds that what had once been a trail of rocks is now a deep river so wide that the town on the other side appears tiny. Chihiro and her parents have unwittingly crossed into the spirit world, and now Chihiro alone must find a way to get them out. So that's basically the first couple of minutes of the movie, and then the rest of the movie is Chihiro's journey through the spirit world, which primarily consists of her getting a job in the bathhouse to work for Yubaba, who is essentially our villain of the film. And I did want to talk a little bit about your intro, because I think you're absolutely right. Like, it feels like this movie is sort of supposed to be a horror movie, but it doesn't ever really feel that scary. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. The first is that Yubaba, our villain, has very specific rules that she has to obey. And that kind of makes her contained. And those rules are basically how Chihiro gets them out. I mean, that and like Haku
the
helps
contract.
her. Yeah, there's a contract, and there's, she does try to do little tricks, but as long as you know something of the rules, she has to obey the rules. The other thing is that Miyazaki is kind of known, all of Studio Ghibli is kind of known for this sort of scary/cute dynamic, where there are a lot of creatures in his films that are sort of on the border between scary and cute. And I think that kind of has the effect of making scary looking things seem a lot more lovable. I think the prime example of this is No Face.
Well, I was going to say that before No Face, the guy who gets on the elevator with her, not guy,
yes, the radish
the creature
spirit
that gets on the elevator, that is the one that looks kind of creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, really creepy, and you just think, oh, she's going to gobble her up.
Mm-hmm.
But he watches out for her till she gets to the floor that she needs to get to. Everybody looks out for her in this film. They are so protective, not just of her, but of each other. Yeah. I just love that dynamic.
Yeah.
But you're right. No Face too.
Yeah. That's the radish spirit. I mean, No Face kind of became one of the really well-known images of the movie, I think, because it's such a striking design. If you haven't seen the film, you should see it. But No Face is kind of like a white mask on top of a black semi-see-through body, and the mask is sort of not exactly expressionless, but it's like a painted on mask, and No Face is initially only able to communicate through like very faint noises and like hand gestures. And basically Chihiro, when she's working for the bathhouse, accidentally lets him in because it's a bathhouse, but it's a bathhouse for the spirits. It's a place where spirits
She thinks she's doing the right thing by letting him in.
He looks like a spirit, so she leaves the door open because it's raining outside.
It's raining outside. And his the image of this character also kind of harkens back to that Freddy Krueger character. I don't know if it was in the 80s or 90s that had the mask. And even today, little boys and girls, too, at Halloween wear these masks. So
and also Scream, the movie Scream, the villain wears... That Scream mask.
Maybe that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. But it's definitely a mask that even today, 20, 30 years later, kids are still wearing at Halloween. So
yeah, for sure.
I wonder if he had that in mind as he was designing it. But and No Face is a gentle creature, but we'll get into other things later. But a lot of these characters seem to not have control over their actions sometimes. Yeah. And he certainly seems to not have control. But he takes a liking to her and watches out for her, as do many of the spirit characters in the films.
Yeah, there's kind of a running theme, because No Face does become sort of a problem in the plot, but there's kind of this running theme, and it shows up in a lot of Miyazaki work, of something that is inherently either good or neutral in nature, but has been corrupted, often by pollution. So Chihiro takes a job at the bathhouse, and one of the first really hard tasks that Yubaba forces on her is they have what they think is a stink spirit come to the bathhouse. Everyone's freaked out. It smells really bad. Everyone's like trying to avoid it. They usher all of the other spirits back to their rooms so they won't be bothered by the stink spirit. And then Chihiro has to wash the stink spirit, the quote-unquote stink spirit. And because of No Face's intervention, she's actually able to, because No Face steals a bunch of tokens that the foreman wouldn't give her.
And you almost wonder if No Face can see the future, because he steals those for her when she doesn't think she needs them.
Yeah.
But later on, she needs them.
Yeah. Well, and he sees her need one. She goes to ask for one. So the way that I've always interpreted it as is she did him a favor by letting him into the bathhouse, so he wants to keep doing her favors, but he doesn't necessarily understand how. So he gets her the one token, and she's grateful for that, so he assumes she must want tokens. That's what she wants. So he gives her a whole bunch of tokens, and she's like, I only needed the one. But then she does end up.
But then she needs him. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting connection they drew
Yeah,
there.
it's interesting. But yeah, so in the course of washing the spirit, she realizes that it has something sticking out of it, which turns out to be a bike handle. And they manage to pull that out, and that basically causes a cascade of essentially pollution coming out of this spirit, which turns out to be a river spirit and not a stink spirit at all.
Much smaller. I mean, it's a huge glob of mud and junk, and then all of this gets washed away, literally washed away in this scene. Where they are taking care of this creature and cleaning him and letting him wash away all this pollution and crud and mud, and then he becomes this beautiful but
like wizened. The implication is that he's super ancient, and and then he's grateful to Chihiro, and he gives her a ball of medicine that proves like really instrumental later on. It helps her to save both Haku and No Face later on. But yeah, the other thing that I wanted to say is my partner likes to talk about the gloopy monsters of Miyazaki films. It's like the way that they animate a lot of these monsters, they often do have this sort of gloopiness to him. I don't really know why this appears to be an obsession with Miyazaki, but it is true that in I think every single one of his movies, maybe not Totoro, there is eventually a gloopy monster that is just sort of glopping along.
Gelatinous and I don't know the right word either, but
kind of gross but beautifully animated.
And kind of beautiful, gross and beautiful at the same time. So, and maybe we should talk a little bit about the animation here. I'm going to say a little bit, and then you want to talk about it more in depth. You're going to talk about the fact that it uses traditional frame-by-frame drawing as a foundation. But this is what I did some research on it, and Roger Ebert loved this film. And if you don't know who Roger Ebert is, look him up. He actually is no longer with us, but a lot of his writing is available out on the interwebs. And if you can find it, do yourself a favor and read his reviews of older movies, or even watch some of his video movies from the 70s and 80s. He's great. He was a great film reviewer.
Yeah, once upon a time, he was America's film critic. He was like the most famous film critic.
Yeah, well, he and Gene Siskel had a show, and name is not coming to me, but it was one of my favorite things to watch on television.
Wasn't it just called Siskel and Ebert?
Well, eventually it was Siskel and Ebert.
Okay.
But they had a different name at the beginning, and they were sitting in these two theater seats in a theater, back and forth, like a crossfire kind of thing. And they would, but you could tell that they had a great respect for each other and a great love for movies. And it was just so wonderful to watch. Gene Siskel died very young, and actually so did Roger Ebert. They both, I think Siskel was in his 50s. Ebert might have made it to 70, but they both died pretty young. And this is what Roger had to say about Spirited Away. He said, "It is surely one of the finest of all animated films, and it has its foundations in the traditional bedrock of animation, which is frame-by-frame drawing. Miyazaki began his career in that style, but he is a realist and has permitted the use of computers for some of the busy work. He personally draws thousands of frames by hand. Quote, this is Miyazaki, we take handmade cell animation and digitize it in order to enrich the visual look, he said in 2002, but everything starts with the human hand drawing. And this is Ebert again. I told him I love the gratuitous motion in his films. And this is what I liked about it too. Instead of every movement being dictated by the story, sometimes people will just sit for a moment, or sigh, or gaze at a running stream, or do something extra, not to advance the story, but to give the sense of time and place and who they are. Miyazaki said, we have a word for that in Japanese. It's called ma, M-A, emptiness. It's there intentionally. He clapped his hand, and then, end quote, he clapped his hands 3 or 4 times and said again, the time in between my clapping is ma. If you just have nonstop action with no breathing space at all, it's just busyness.
Yeah.
So that's the introduction to this section of the podcast today on animation. Take it away, Tess.
I mean, I'm really glad you put that up, or you brought that up, because I couldn't remember the name of it, but that's a thing that Miyazaki is known for, is those moments of Ma, those moments in the films, which are often people's favorite moments where nothing is happening and someone is just existing in the space. There's actually, I kind of have a theory that is a big part of why there's this thing that's really popular on YouTube that young people will be very familiar with, but I don't know if you have really seen it at all, where there are these playlists of essentially like soft twinkly music to like a single animated image that is just barely moving. I like to put them on in the background when I'm writing. A lot of people will put them on while they're studying. The most famous one of these is Lo-Fi Girl, which is a channel that the image is a girl sitting. It looks very anime style, and it's a girl sitting at her desk reading something or studying or whatever. She's usually got a cat, and very small things will kind of oscillate back and forth. So it's a very simple kind of animation, and it's very meditative. There are some of these there that I'll pull them up and I'll just watch this barely moving image for several minutes because it's just like so calming. My favorite one of these channels is called Blue Turtle, which has this ongoing arc. The main character is named Ithia, and she's this like traveling character in some sort of like medieval fantasy world who just like moves from place to place, and like that's it. That's pretty much all that happens. Sometimes she's studying, sometimes she's sitting beside a stream, but it's just really relaxing, and it's really great for if you need to concentrate on something and you're like me and you can't sit in total absolute silence.
I can, but I understand.
I mean, I think I maybe could if I didn't, share my office with my partner who sometimes has to take phone calls. So
yeah. Well, and Miyazaki also just has such incredible attention to detail.
Yes.
There's one point where Sen is her name in the spirit world, but Chihiro is
Chihiro.
How do you pronounce it?
Chihiro.
When she walks up the stairs at some point when she's trying to get up the hill, they're very deep, wide stairs, and she takes them one at a time. It's kind of a hop, which is something every human being has done. And when I saw that, I had to stop and think about it a second. You just never see that. It's so incredibly accurate, and most of the time filmmakers just kind of gloss over that stuff. And it's an animated film. You don't have to do that in an animated film,
Yeah.
But he did. And it was just so much creativity and detail everywhere. And Ebert, final quote from Ebert is, "It is realistic, changing, detailed motion."
And I feel like that moment that you're talking about, that's also one of the things that kind of is in a way, it is the core of the conflict of the movie, which is just that Chihiro is this small girl who has to do this monumental task on her own.
Yes.
And like that moment is one of the most obvious like visual examples of it. She's so small, she can't take these stairs like a normal person.
No, she has to take them one at a time and hop, and it's just kind of a little bit of foreshadowing of what's to come.
Yeah,
that she takes on each monumental task as it comes, fearful, not always understanding, childlike, and yet takes it on and pushes through it and gets what she needs, achieves her goal.
Yeah,
but it's step by step. She, it's a little bit here, a little bit there, step at a time. But she does it. She solves everything.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like about Miyazaki films is when you're a writer, you will inevitably end up having conversations at some point about active versus passive protagonists, and there are good reasons to write either one. Typically speaking, in the West, we tend to believe that active protagonists are unilaterally better than passive protagonists and more fun to read, though the big exception to this is often romance books with a female lead, where a lot of the time the female protagonist is much more passive. But in a lot of Eastern art, and also just there is a general other school of thought, which is that in many ways a passive protagonist is more realistic, because a lot of us are just people trying to go about our lives, and then stuff happens to us and we have to react.
Yes.
And what I love about Miyazaki films is that's often how the story starts, but the meat of the story is about how that protagonist ends up reacting to that. So like a lot of Miyazaki stories do have this character who just kind of stumbles into a situation where a bunch of stuff happens to her, and they are often her. A lot of Miyazaki protagonists are female. But then she isn't defeated by these things that happen to her. She decides to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even if that feels like a small motion at the time. It all builds into her succeeding. Most Miyazaki films have happy endings.
Yeah. Not easily achieved happy endings.
Yes, hard-won happy endings for sure.
Mm-hmm. Hard-won. Mm-hmm.
I did want to talk a little bit about the animation industry.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily understand all of the nuances of, hand-drawn animation, and like the various different processes in each individual film, but I do know that, broadly speaking, the biggest animation industries have been the American industry and the Japanese industry, although I believe nowadays there's also a pretty big industry in Korea. And once upon a time, both industries were largely dominated by what is called 2D animation or hand-drawn animation. In the very early days, that literally meant that every shot was hand-drawn and then manipulated.
And you have to understand that there are 24 frames in a second in most motion picture films. So when you're looking at 1 second of an animated film, you're seeing 24 separate drawings, and at least in the early years, that's what it was. Yeah.
And in Japan, that has largely continued to be true. The Japanese animation industry still largely favors hand-drawn animation, which is very labor-intensive. Whereas the American animation industry has, by and large, turned almost completely to 3D animation, which definitely still involves a lot of work, but it is much less labor intensive, and therefore it's considered to be cheaper, because basically it takes fewer man hours to do, so you don't have to pay people as much. And one of the big differences, by my understanding of it, is that in 3D animation, you basically animate, you create what's called a rig of the character, and one person or a team of people essentially creates all of the moves that character can do, and then you kind of have that as your model, and you base everything off of that. So there's a lot of...
That makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of upfront work, but then after that, you can kind of use that rig and place it in the space. And a lot of animation is divided into people who work on the character rigs and people who work on the backgrounds. And it's more complicated than that. I'm not an expert. This is just what I know about.
Well, and also, and again, we're talking about the early animation here, just as with comic books, you have different artists working on different pieces of it. So you may have one artist who draws the basic picture, and then another one that comes in and colors it in, and then another one that comes in and does the outline. If you require an outline, and in comic books they do. So yeah, and it's usually it takes so many people to do this work.
So in America, we have largely moved over to 3D animation. The last Disney film that was 2D animation or hand drawn was The Princess and the Frog. And
do you know what year that was?
I can pull it up.
You keep talking, I'll look it up.
And every Disney movie that has come out since then has been 3D animation. To visually...
2009.
2009, yeah. So yeah, for more than a decade, American animation has been dominated by 3D animation. To visually know the difference, basically Pixar films have always been mostly 3D animated. So like Toy Story is a 3D animated film. You can kind of tell because...
And I just want to say that when they do that, when they move to 3D, the movie is more about the stories than it is about the visuals, at least in my opinion, which means they are making those are movies that are specifically aimed at children. So when you get a really well done, hand drawn, animated film like Spirited Away, adults can enjoy it. We're not, I think after 15 minutes, you've completely forgotten this is an animated film, that you're looking at a cartoon. You've completely forgotten it because the drawing is so sophisticated and the writing is well done, and the story keeps you engaged. It's just a very different experience from even some of the best of the last 20 years. I mean, I had Beauty and the Beast and
That's 30 years ago, Mom.
well, okay, the last few decades. Toy Story, some of those, the Aladdin movies, which for me were great because of Robin Williams. He made that franchise. But even the really good ones are made for children. They might have some dialogue in them provided by Robin Williams, but
and I think some of that
is
is a cultural difference. And actually, Miyazaki has essentially talked about this in that when this movie, Spirited Away, was first optioned to be shown in theaters in the US, his stipulation was no cuts. And the reason that he wanted to stipulate that was he felt that American movies for children were heavily censored, that Americans have a tendency to kind of coddle their children in the media that they make for them, and he is not on board with that, basically.
And that's not to say that he is ignoring the sensibilities of children, because this film is not coddling children. It's not coddling the viewer, but it does provide this scary storyline with a gentleness that anybody can watch and not be frightened out of their mind. So and that kind of speaks to what I was talking about earlier. That's why it's kind of it's for all ages. And he says it was aimed at 10-year-old girls because that's who he thinks of as his audience. Well, I guess I'm just a 10-year-old girl because I love this movie.
I mean, I wonder if he largely thinks that because this movie came out after Kiki's Delivery Service, and I didn't see that when I was a kid. I assume we just didn't really know about it, but I know a lot of people my age for whom that was their first Miyazaki film, and that also has a young female protagonist, and it was just like really huge among 10-year-old girls, and that one came out before this one, so I wonder if that's part of why he felt like that was a large part of his audience.
Well, and bless his heart, how many movies out there today are made for 10-year-old girls?
Yeah, for real.
They're made for 10-year-old boys.
Yeah.
There are a lot of movies made for 10-year-old boys and 30-year-old boys.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Kiki's Delivery Service is kind of a more straightforward movie in a lot of ways than this one, but it is literally about a young girl who essentially starts her own small business. Like Kiki is a witch, but she's kind of bad at being a witch. But one of the things that she can do is fly on her broom. And this is a world where at 13, young witches have to go to a new city and try to live on their own for a year. And she very quickly figures out that the best way for her to make money is to start a delivery service. So it's literally a movie about a young girl starting her own small business. It's a very go west young woman kind of narrative.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a great thing for a young girl to see, because Kiki's not necessarily brilliant at anything, but she still, holds her own and makes her own life somewhere. Honestly, in that way, it's kind of similar to Amelie.
Yeah.
Anyway, my last note on the animation industry is basically just we need to pay animators more. In both the US and Japan, they're kind of underpaid and overworked. And, the Japanese animation industry really loves the work that goes into these kind of films, but also a lot of the people who work on them are underpaid and overworked because it's just sort of considered to be an honor to get to do these things. And that's nice and all, but we should pay them better. And Miyazaki is known to be kind of a workaholic.
I believe that. Yeah. Artists overall need to be paid better.
Yeah.
We need to respect the arts more. We need to support the arts. Humans are artists, they're artistic. We have cave drawings going back 20 and 30,000 years. Our brains are made to create art and stories. And we need to respect that, even if we don't do it for a living, and support it. I think that's just my opinion, but I'm a bleeding heart liberal. Do you have anything else on animation?
I don't have anything else on animation. Do you?
Well, I was just going to ask you, let's talk a little bit about that beginning of the film again. And I thought it was, you made an interesting point yesterday when you told me that you accidentally started to watch the English. So there were two versions of the film available to watch on Amazon in America. Yeah, there's the original with Japanese language and subtitles in English. Then there's one that's been dubbed into English, and It's interesting, if you look at IMDb, you will notice that the actors in both the voice actors in both films are kind of intermingled in the
Yeah.
IMDb credits, which is weird. So Tess accidentally started watching the dubbed version, and you found that the treatment of the parents in that was much harsher than in the
Yeah.
Japanese spoken
Yeah,
one.
there were some interesting differences. There were some subtle differences in the translation and also just the tone of voice. Like I watched it and I've had this experience a couple times because I saw this movie when it first came out in American theaters, and then I've seen it a couple times since then. And every time I rewatch it, I always have this moment because I think I've only ever seen the dubbed version before. Actually, that's
Oh, really?
that's the
Okay.
version that came out in theaters. So in general, when you're watching anime specifically, like Japanese animation, people who are in the know about the anime fandom know that it's always better to watch the subtitles than the dubbed version.
Oh, that's true of any foreign film
Yes,
too. But
but
yeah.
typically speaking, that's not taken as true for the Miyazaki films because a lot more money is put into the English dub version of Miyazaki films than almost any other anime. And for me personally, my other exception to this would be Cowboy Bebop. I love the English dubbed version.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
It's the one that I grew up with, and it's just how I, view these characters now. But I will say, now that I have also seen the subtitled version, I definitely think for this film, the subtitled version is kind of better. But the experience that I kept having is I would rewatch this movie and I would be like, God, I always forget what assholes her parents are. But then I switched over to the subtitled version. I was like, they're actually not as bad in this version.
They're not.
One of the moments that I think exemplifies this is when they're walking down the tunnel, and it's still a little harsh in the Japanese version, but it's just worse in the English version. They're walking down the tunnel, and Chihiro is kind of clinging to her mom, and in the Japanese version, her mother says in kind of a calm, almost soft tone, "Chihiro, don't cling, you'll make me trip." In the English version, her mother goes, "Chihiro, stop clinging, you're gonna make me trip." And it's just so much worse.
Well, it is worse. I did get a little bit of that tone in the Japanese version as well. And I actually put it in my notes. Are they trying to make the mother out to look bad here? But then you look at the dad, and he's also doing some just behavioral things that don't make any sense. He's when they first take a wrong turn, he starts driving up this country road that is, badly paved. It's got rocks in it, and he is like driving like a bat out of hell.
Yeah.
And everybody's like really scared. And at one point, Chihiro hits her head, and I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna get some Wizard of Oz here. She's, that's what this is gonna be. But it's not. And there's just and then when they get to the tunnel, when they get out of the car, and all along she's been saying, "Dad, don't do this, don't do this, don't get out of the car, don't go," So the parents go to the tunnel, and then they're pulled they go into the tunnel, and as they're standing at the entrance to the tunnel, Chihiro notices that the wind is going into the tunnel rather than out, I think. So until they get to the tunnel, and then they find this, and then the parents are just like gaga over this being what did he call it?
An abandoned
amusement park. And he said, yeah, they built a lot of those in the 90s, and I had to pause the movie at that point and find out, what year was this made? What do you mean in the 90s?
2002.
It's 2001. Yeah. They started this movie while it was still in the 90s.
Yeah.
So that was a weird thing to say.
Interestingly, but in the English dub version, he says in the early 90s.
Well, see, that would have made more sense. Or even in the 80s. But anyway, so they are pulled in, they go in and they start gobbling this food down, and they do act like pigs when they're eating it.
Yeah.
So once I got further into the film and saw that there were all these spirits and people were, there were spells, and she, at one point they say that she's kind of under a spell because she's not, anyway. So it occurred to me, this is at the very beginning, once they pass those little spirit things, those blocks,
the spirit houses, yeah.
And they go up, that the parents are being drawn in. She might be immune to it because she's a child, and I think this is deliberate. I haven't read anything, he hasn't said in it, but I think they are drawn towards it. There's some kind of spiriting them away, pulling them in to this new environment so they can become slaves and turn them into pigs. And basically, I don't think they have control over their actions. They're really being pulled in. And I didn't really come to the conclusion until I was 2/3 into the film. So it's not, so at first you think they're just being assholes.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from that perspective, because at the end, when they're done, they don't remember anything. They're much nicer people. They're getting in the car and they're driving back to their home. And it's like, I think one of the things that Chihiro feels is that their personalities are changing right in front of her face. She doesn't understand why they're making the decisions they're making. And we don't know how much of that is true because we just started watching. We don't know these people. But as you get into the film, you begin to realize, they really were not in control of their own decisions at that point.
I had some similar thoughts watching it. I don't think it's as clear cut as I think you think it is.
Yeah, it's not clear cut.
Yeah,
no.
I think it's ambiguous because I definitely also had the thought, especially with the wind comment, where I was like, are they under a spell? Is this something that they're actually deciding to do? And I do think it's ambiguous. I think an alternate explanation for their behavior is that the film is from Chihiro's point of view, and it's meant to be the point of view of a child who doesn't get to control her own life, and instead her parents do. And I think you could see it as sort of metaphorical for how children don't always entirely understand why adults make the decisions that they do, and that sometimes decisions that make sense to adults seem harsh and mean to children who don't get any input and don't want it to go that way. And I think that even explains the change at the end, because at the end, Chihiro has become more of an adult. She's gone on this adventure, and so maybe she's a little bit more on an even playing field with her parents at the end, and so they don't seem as mysterious and mean to her. I think you can interpret it either way. I think both work equally well with the plot. I also wanted to say one of the other things that Miyazaki is known for is drawing food in a way that makes people hungry for animated food. Like, people love the way that animated food looks in his films. I actually think that this is not a great example of that, because I think he's trying to have a little bit more of a grossness to it because of the pig thing. Yeah. But in most of his other films, he's really well known for these like beautiful food scenes that just look so delicious.
Well, and even when she's sitting on the bridge at one point, and Lynn comes out and gives her a bun, and she hands you the bun, and you think,
bun.
It's a huge bun, but but we all know what it tastes like. Oh yeah, that's going to be good. And then she gets something happens, and she ends up spitting in it and tossing it. Oh, she takes the medicine,
yeah,
or the ball. Yeah, and it's not really supposed to work on her, I guess.
I think it's just it's bitter. On it. I think it's like a bitter.
It's bitter.
Medicine,
okay, that's what it is. Yeah. So she spits the whole thing out in the bun too, and it's like, oh, what a waste.
Well, she doesn't actually spit out the whole bun. She spits out part of it, but then she starts eating the bun really fast to try to get rid of the taste.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's another time with somebody, maybe it's Lynn, maybe it's somebody else. She's not feeling well. She hasn't slept well. And they give her 3. It's not buns really. It's kind of like a bread thing.
I'm pretty sure it's onigiri, which is actually a rice ball. Because it's in like the little, this is haku.
Triangle shape.
Yeah, it's the little triangle shaped. I've actually had these. I love them. It's Haku gives them to her, and that's when he says that he put a spell on it to give her energy back. I was watching that part with my partner, and we both looked at each other, and we were like, that's also just how food works. Food just gives you your energy back.
It does. It makes you feel better.
But yeah, it's energy. Onigiri, which is a rice ball, usually in the shape of a triangle with like a stuffing inside. So a common way to do it is like tuna and mayo on the inside.
Okay.
Yeah. I love them. You can get them in every 7-Eleven, and they're so good.
Oh my God! In Seattle?
In Japan.
Oh,
I mean in
Japan. Okay.
Every 7-Eleven in Japan.
And we should back up a second here and tell listeners that Tess has been to Japan twice.
Actually, I've been to the Ghibli Museum in Japan, which is a little hard to get to.
Oh, no, that I would like to see, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's so worth it. And you're not allowed to take pictures on the inside. You can take pictures of the outside, and the outside is quite beautiful.
It's copyrighted.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they want people to go. But yeah, I guess at this point I should just out myself as like a huge Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli fan. I've been to the museum. Yeah. I'm literally drinking from my Spirited Away mug right now. now.
Yeah.
It's a teal mug with a picture of Haku in his dragon form on it.
Mm-hmm. And here's a thing about a little bit more about the images. We talked about how the spirits are kind of monster-like and gelatinous, and what was Dosie's word for it?
Gloopy.
Okay, but the dragons are beautiful.
Yes.
Dragons are interpreted differently, I guess, in every culture. We tend to see them as big dinosaur-like fire-breathing creatures, but it's more like a serpent in this movie, and with a long tongue, no fire, or maybe there is fire, I don't remember, but I don't think so. And
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of dragons in Japanese and Chinese culture are water dragons, and this one is too. He's a dragon, but he's also the spirit of the river.
And he's just very well. I mean, he flies.
Yeah, he
first
flies.
of all, it's a serpent that flies. It just seems very gentle.
Yeah.
I think and just at one with the sky and the wind, and
he's got kind of a flow to him.
Yeah,
like he's kind of constantly undulating.
Like he's in the water.
Yeah,
like he's undulating, and like he's in the water, but he's flying in the air.
Yeah.
So it's really also, beautifully done.
Since we haven't made this explicit, and I didn't actually explain the whole plot, we're talking about Haku, who when he first shows up looks to be a boy of maybe Chihiro's age, but
a little bit older.
Yeah, a little bit older. It's sort of ambiguous. Honestly, in the English language version, he seems much older because the voice actor that they got for him is clearly an adult man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he turns out, at one point, Chihiro sees him in his dragon form, and she somehow immediately gets that it's him. I mean, I think she was just talking to him, and then she turns away, and she turns back, and she sees a dragon flying off, and she just knows that it's him. I think that might also be a little bit of, a lot of the times, there's this idea that children are a little bit more aware of the spirit world and a little bit more connected to it, so that could just be, that's what's going on. And then eventually, we find out, well, first of all, we find out that he can't leave Yubaba's service because he no longer remembers his original name, which is a thing that Chihiro also goes through because when she signs her contract with Yubaba steals her name and renames her Sen, and she has a moment where she finally remembers her name. And then eventually...
Yeah, and that's the spell. When we're talking about the spell, that when they sign the contract, it's kind of a spell that gets put on them. And Haku originally came to the palace, or whatever you want to call it, the bathhouse, to apprentice with her because he wanted to be like her.
He wanted to learn magic.
Like a wizarding.
Yeah.
He wanted to learn magic, but he has learned his lesson and doesn't really like what he's doing.
Yeah.
But he can't remember his name, and then when she gets out of her contract, she remembers her name and she remembers his name.
So we find out that he's the spirit of a river. When she was a little girl, she fell in his river and he saved her. He carried her to shore so that she wouldn't drown.
Because he knows her name when he finds her and starts to help her.
Yeah, he knows her
at the very beginning of the film and befriends her. He knows her name, and I actually wrote down, how does he know her name? And she asks him at some point, and he says he had a really well-written response to it.
He's like, I've known you for a long time or something.
You told me long ago.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I wrote down, love that. It was such a sweet thing to say. You told me. And the thing is, she told him her name, and when she is able to remember her name, she tells him his name. And so I love that connection. And I love the fact that to win their freedom, and we know at some point now Haku is probably going to be free as well.
Yeah.
They have to reacquire their names.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of say her name, that thing that, that expression that we have been using, some of us, for 10 years now. Say her name. If you don't have a name, who are you?
Yeah.
What is, you lose your identity.
Yeah, it's about identity. And actually, I was reading a couple of articles that are kind of about the wordplay in this film, and one of them pointed out that the name Sen actually means 1,000, so it's kind of like Yubaba gave her a number instead of a name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. She's a prisoner.
Yeah.
So, and just to wrap up the animation, I love the just general stuff. I love the attention to detail. The flowers are also realistically beautiful, and when they have a garden, and it's not, there's not just the same bush of roses drawn over and over and over again. There are like 7 or 8 different plant species of flowers in the garden when they walk through it. Colors are vibrant. There's a lot of mud, so there's a lot of contrast in this film between beauty and dirtiness and disgusting, sloppy, slobbish,
stink,
dirtiness. But yeah, there you go. There's a lot of humor in here too. The writing is so wonderful.
Yeah,
every time she falls, and the humor isn't just written humor; it's visual humor, and it's kind of slapstick. Every time she falls, she lands in a way that should break her neck.
Yep.
And it doesn't. She gets up, dusts herself off, and she's going. At the end of the film, when the family leaves, when they leave the tunnel, as they're driving away from the tunnel down the road, the camera looks back at the tunnel, and you can see that the car has left a track in the grass. How many animated films are going to do that?
Yeah.
It's just. And in real life, that's if it's muddy and it's been raining a lot, it's probably muddy.
Yeah.
That's realistic.
Yeah.
And he grasped that. That gives you a whole different sense of that image. It's not just a generic image. They actually were there.
Yeah, and I think that there's kind of this deliberate ambiguity at the end of the film where you don't know how much time has passed in the real world.
Yeah.
But the implication is that at least some time has passed, or at least I feel like that area where the car parks is kind of like the meeting place between the spirit world and the real world.
Yeah.
And so it almost feels like maybe the car was both in the spirit world and in the human world at the same time. And so it had to experience some of that passage of time, and we literally never know, because we never know if there were consequences to them potentially disappearing for a long period of time. But when they come back to the car, they say that the inside is covered in dust and there's branches and leaves that have fallen on the car. So there is some
vines that are growing on it.
Yeah. So I think that the tracks are important. He wanted it to be very clear that this left an impression. This
and
happened.
Interestingly, the parents say at that point to her, they kind of blame it on her. You got lost. We had to wait for you. And she just stares at them like okay.
Okay, people. Yeah. This movie, I don't know that I can even single out my favorite images from this movie, but definitely the flowers are one. Also, there's that shot that almost looks like a watercolor that I think is right between it's an in-between shot in between scenes. I think it's maybe right after Haku, or right before Haku is about to leave on another one of his journeys, and there's just this shot of the skyline, the kind of blue and purple skyline with sort of a vague impression of a building in the distance. It's just such a gorgeous shot.
Yeah.
And then,
the evening shots, whenever they do the sunset shots, those are beautiful.
So beautiful. And then my other favorite sequence, at least visually, of the film is when they get on the train after the area has flooded and the train is moving through the water. It's such a cool shot, and it's just to explain it a little, it's Chihiro, No Face, and then her two new little creatures on her shoulder who are they used to be Yubaba's baby and hawk slave respectively. But Zaniba showed up and turned them into something else, and now they're enjoying riding around with Chihiro, and they all get to get help, hopefully for Haku, because at that point they think he's dying, although it kind of turns out that Chihiro has already saved him with the medicine. But yeah, so they get on this train, and one of the things that's interesting is she gives her tickets that the boiler man gave her to the ticket taker. You never see the ticket taker's face. It's so from her perspective, and she's too short to look up. And you also it's a
very
spirit train.
Good.
It's a spirit train, so we have no idea what this creature might look like. So it serves this double purpose of really aligning you with the perspective of a child for whom everyone is kind of too tall to see directly into their faces, and also it leaves the conductor of the spirit train ambiguous. We don't know what they look like.
And that whole spirit train thing is just so beautifully drawn and beautifully filmed. For much of that scene, No Face and Shakira are sitting together, just calm, just peacefully sitting next to each other, their hands folded in their lap as the train moves along. And they stop at one point, people get off or spirits get off.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody gets on, but you remember while they're on this train that the warning was be sure and get off at the swamp, whatever it is. So you're thinking about that. Are they gonna miss their getting off at the right place? And they're just calmly sitting there, and it's so beautifully filmed. And then just a little bit about Yubaba's sister, who is just the opposite. And they are. She says at one point, we are two parts of a whole.
Yeah.
And she is the good part, and she's just so. She is your loving grandmotherly type who takes care of everything and tells them how to fix it and helps them along. I can't remember how they get back. Haku comes and gets them.
Haku comes and flies them back, yeah.
Yeah, and flies them back, yeah. So, but that whole scene is just really beautifully done. So
I know I read this somewhere, but I could not find the source for this. But somewhere I read that originally Zeniba and Yubaba were supposed to have different designs, and then they just kind of ran out of money to create a new design, so Zeniba got the same design as Yubaba. They literally look completely identical.
They're twins.
Yeah,
they're twins. Yeah.
But yeah, and then the other thing is the spirits on the train. They look different from the spirits in the bathhouse. In the bathhouse, all the spirits have like a very individual appearance. Like we talked about the radish spirit, but we see a couple of them, and they all have a very solid form, and they all look individual. On the train, the spirits all are kind of like this black see-through thing. Like they sort of have an outline, but they're all kind of vague. And my partner said that whenever you get to this point, he always wonders if this is like a train to the afterlife.
Well, what I thought it was is when Haku finds her in the beginning and she's starting to fade, and he tells her she has to do something to stop so she won't fade away completely. And I wonder if the people on the train weren't able to prevent themselves from fading.
That's definitely a possibility, especially if this place has like pulled other people in.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were humans, and that's what happened to them. Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about the themes then before we call it a day?
Yeah, we should. I want to talk a little bit about Kami and Shinto. So Kami is kind of the name in Japanese for spirits, and they are a big part of the Shinto religion of Japan. And
okay, yeah.
A number of people in Japan are Buddhist. Buddhism came to Japan at some point and did become, by and large, the dominant religion. But Shinto is the kind of religion that can kind of go along with other religions, so it never disappeared from Japan. There are Shinto shrines all over Japan, and one of the big parts of Shinto is this belief in kami, which are these spirits that are often like the spirits of parts of nature, like of physical things. They are simultaneously spiritual, but they are also like a part of the world. And you can see this in this film and in pretty much every Miyazaki film where the spirits come up. That, as we were talking about, Haku is the spirit of the river, and there's like in different films there's like the spirit of the forest and the spirit of these different things. And part of the Shinto religion is this belief that you need to respect even inanimate objects. You need to respect the physical world, and that's partly because everything is believed to have this spirit that is kind of a part of the like interconnected energy of the universe. I'm probably not doing a great job of explaining it because I'm not Japanese.
It's the force, man. It's the force.
Yeah, kind of. But it's just this idea that we are all sort of interconnected and everything has a spirit. Yeah. And you need to...
And if you think about it, when we die, we become dust that goes back out into the universe.
Yeah.
And aside from whatever religious beliefs you have, that's a physical fact.
Yeah.
And yeah, we are interconnected.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this kind of comes up a lot in a lot of Miyazaki films. One of his biggest recurring themes is essentially environmentalism. He really has a respect for the natural world and is very disturbed by the fact that the modern world does not respect the natural world.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
Mhm.
what's going on in that scene where Chihiro saves the older river spirit. That spirit has been polluted to the point where its essential being has completely changed from what it was supposed to be. You know, Yubaba has a sense when she first sees it that it's something other than what they all think it is, but everyone else sees it as a stink spirit, and it's actually this beautiful river spirit. That's because human beings have polluted the river. That's what's happening there. It's very straightforward. The film of his that is generally considered the most environmentalist, well, actually, I guess there's two, but one of them is Princess Mononoke, where there are multiple of these spirits who get corrupted by pollution to much more disastrous effects. Princess Mononoke is a much darker film than this one. It's a lot more violent, and the effects of this pollution are much more lethal. People die in these films. Yeah. And then the other one is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is a wild film, but it takes place in like a far future where human beings have contaminated much of the earth, and there are huge swaths where you cannot go without wearing a mask. And Nausicaa herself as a character is this actually kind of Jesus-like figure who is learning to live in this new world and is trying to work to bring back some of the old plants. She has this like little underground she has this like underground lab where she's trying to grow the plants that used to be able to grow above ground and no longer are able to. Anyway, we don't need to get super into that, but the and the two are connected, environmentalism and Shinto, because it's, you know, a lot of Shinto is about respecting the natural world, and that's what environmentalism is largely about too.
Well, and that sensibility in this film also kind of reminds me of my my other favorite Japanese film, Perfect Days, which you and I watched together last year. Just a very sweet, low-key film about a man living in the world alone and experiencing the joys and the sadness, and you know, and he cleans toilets and takes it very seriously. He does it. He does a good job. He makes sure that he does it right, and even though it's just cleaning toilets, because there's just a respect he has for the world, and it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful sensibility. I love that. Now I took a much more literal approach to the themes in this movie, of course, especially as someone who is a parent. It's a coming of age story.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's an allegory about overcoming fears and obstacles and literal, you know, demons.
Yeah.
Spirit demons. And it's, you know, the power of imagination. Is similar to Amelie, I think, and how it helps us cope and grow into the people that we need to become. I think that's a really beautiful part of this film. I really like it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I already said that for a frightening story, it was never really scary. The characters respect each other. The bowing, you don't see it a lot.
Yeah.
But I love that about Japanese culture, that they always bow. And in fact, there's a scene in the swamp with No Face and Bo the Rat and Sen. The walking lamp comes out and bows to them. And it's like even the lamp does that. It's like this just genuine, just it's written into their customs. That's what that bow is all about, I think. And you know how all the characters take care of her, Lynn and Kamaji and Haku and even Bo. Maybe not her parents so much, but that's okay.
Yeah,
because this is from a child's perspective.
Yeah,
and it's also about not being. I think the moral here is, don't be afraid of what is different.
Yeah.
You know, this is a completely alien universe to her. It's, you know, but she sticks it out. You stick it out until you figure it out. The stink monster with the gold. If she had given up, they never would have, you know, freed him from his prison of mud. And she also, you know, it's a coming of age, and she learns to problem solve. She finds her courage. She learns to become determined. You know, she kind of grows into a determination, and she is fierce, so she be little.
Yeah.
And you know, she goes in to help her parents, but then she increases her circle of people she's helping to include the monster in the bath and Haku, and then finally to help herself to reclaim her name and her freedom. So the title I love, Spirited Away. The parents spirit her away to a new home. The spirits spirit her away to a land where people are treated as slaves, all in the pursuit of gold for the owner. Haku, who is actually Kohaku, spirits her away on the wind towards the end. And the spell that the old crone, what is her name? Casts on her.
Yubaba or Zaniba?
Yeah, Yubaba. Yeah, okay. She takes away her name. She spirits away her name.
Yeah.
So, and it's just a wonderful, a lot of different storylines and themes coming together to make just a gorgeous, beautiful, spiritual film.
Yeah.
Very spiritual. Spirited. It's spirited. Yeah. The film itself is spirited. It spirits us away.
I want to talk a little bit about the first time that I saw this movie, and I'll try to keep it brief because we are over an hour.
We are at, an hour.
I saw this movie in theaters when it first came to the U.S., which I think was roughly 2002 when it came to the U.S.
Yeah.
And I saw it with, my friends who, all of us were at least a little bit into anime, and that was part of why we went to go see it. I was probably at that point maybe the least into anime. I had seen some Cowboy Bebop, and I liked it, but I had a hard time getting into kind of any other anime. I am now probably a much bigger anime person, though I'm still pretty picky. But I saw this movie, and it had been sold to us as like a kids movie, but a good kids movie. And then, so I wasn't expecting it to be scary at all. And then we watched it, and like I think it was literally Yubaba. The first time she gets mad, I was like, holy crap, this is scary for a kid's movie. And I was about 13 or 14.
Yeah, you were a teenager at that point.
Yeah, and I just remember seeing it and being like, this is a kid's movie? And it was just kind of this moment for me of both being a little bit shocked that in Japan, of all places, they're like way more willing to show some slightly scary stuff than most American films are. Although I guess arguably, if you go back to like Snow White, the evil queen in that has some really scary moments too.
Yeah.
But it was also just this moment of me realizing how amazing animation could be and how intense and meaningful children's movies could be. And I mean, we've talked about this before. I think that was definitely a moment for me that made me really interested in Japanese culture. Just the fact that they were okay with, making this movie for kids. I was like, what is different in Japanese culture than American culture that their children's movies are this amazing, life-changing experience, and our children's movies are a thing that at the time I no longer had any interest in seeing ever again.
At that point you were into Buffy.
Yes.
And that was a much more, talk about demons, that was a really, it wasn't, you were a little bit older. I think you started watching it when it had been on for a year or two, but it's a very scary show, but it's a very dark show. And so you went from that to Spirited Away, which is so light. And actually you tried for years to get me to watch Spirited Away. And I think I was at a point where I had to see so many animated children's films with you guys. I could not stand the thought of seeing one more. And you kept saying, no, Mom, this is different. This is different. You got to see this. And I finally did. And I remember I watched it by myself, probably on Amazon, late one night, just turning the TV off and feeling the best I had felt in years about movies and art in general, because it was so, excuse my language, so fucking beautiful.
Yep.
And it just has this, it's one of my favorite movies now. I think it really is.
Me too.
And can we get to hot takes really quick? Because I have a hot take on this subject. Okay. So my hot take for this is that this film won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film. It really should have won the Academy Award for Best Picture, because you know what did win that year?
What?
Gladiator.
Oh, Jesus.
Gladiator. Yeah. So...
Sorry.
And it did remind me a little bit of Wizard of Oz in its sensibility.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz for a kids film got it right. There were scary moments, but they were all focused on taking care of each other, so it helped them get through the scary moments, and that's what happens in this film as well. I think there's a lot of connection between those two films. But yeah, it totally should have won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and it didn't, and that's just a shame. And I think Beauty and the Beast did win the Academy Award for Best Picture. It's the only animated film that ever has. Nope. It's never won. Okay, I thought Beauty and the Beast.
Was it nominated though? I do think it was. Beauty and the Beast was like
it was nominated
film in terms
of. So yeah, so Beauty and the Beast, Up, and Toy Story 3 were all nominated for Academy Awards for Best Picture. And Up is actually another animated film that I watched as an adult that I truly loved. And if you haven't seen it, you really should see it. It's a fantastic movie, and the main voice is Ed Asner, who is one of my all-time heroes in the Hollywood industry. And there's a lot of connection between that, too. So that's all I have.
I totally agree. I guess I should clarify. I made a very disgusted noise about Gladiator. I do like Gladiator, but I don't think it should have won Best Picture. It's a very fun movie, but it's honestly kind of a stupid movie. It's like a stupid fun movie, you know?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I am actually, as I get older, I'm starting to like Russell Crowe a little bit more. He actually has taken some risks with his career, and I've seen some of those movies recently. LA Confidential, he's very good in that. But that film was just another macho movie made for men.
Yeah, like, I enjoyed it, and I would watch it again anytime, but I don't think it's a great film. I certainly don't think it's Best Picture worthy. But again, we've talked many times about how much I hate the Oscars.
And we could go on for hours, but this film is so much better. If you have seen Gladiator and you liked it, you owe it to yourself to watch Spirited Away.
Yeah, one of my hot takes is going to be a little bit esoteric. I feel like we need the Best Animated Feature category for the same reason that we need the Best Actress category, which is that it may very well be true that an animated film is actually the best movie of the year, and it may very well be true that a woman's performance is actually the best performance of the year, but they're never going to win those awards if they're put up against live action and men respectively, because we just live in a biased culture. One of these biases is much more insidious than the other, but like the truth of the matter is we live in a culture that is biased against women, and we live in a culture that is biased against animation.
And if you need any proof for that at all, just go back and look at how many women have won the Best Directing Award.
Exactly.
3. And the Academy Awards have been around for 70 years. 3. So, no, if you go to a Best Performance by an actor or actress, or just call it an actor, it will never be a woman.
A man will win every time. Yeah. And similarly, for, again, much less insidious, much less detrimental to our culture, but still an animated film is probably never going to win the Best Picture because we just have a bias. For the same reason that it's very unlikely that a horror movie will ever win Best Picture. We have a bias.
Well, and also international films, as a rule, don't get recognized by the Academy. However, in the last few years, it has been getting better. They have been recognizing international films a little more, and that's awesome. I think that's just great because Hollywood makes really repetitive, generic films a lot of the times, and finding a Best Picture nominee in the crap that they put out could get to be almost impossible if you don't include international films. So
I guess my other hot take, and we didn't end up talking about The Boy and the Heron at all, which is fine. It's just that's the most recent Miyazaki film to come out was The Boy and the Heron, and it got a lot of buzz, I think for a couple of reasons. First, because Miyazaki had claimed before that he was retired and would never make another film. He's very old, and then he's
84 now.
Yeah,
so.
And then he made The Boy and the Heron, and so I think there was a lot of hype over it just because, like, oh my god, we got another Miyazaki film when we thought we weren't going to, and I understand that. But I also honestly think that part of the reason it got so much hype, because it was so much hype, is that it has a male protagonist, and it's also
a boy,
and it's also
a boy.
It's much more semi-autobiographical than a lot of his others.
Oh,
it's like very clearly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like very clearly inspired by Miyazaki's own childhood because he lived through, I want to say World War II, although apparently, wait, is the Pacific War?
Yeah, he could have lived through World War II. Yeah.
It is World War II. Okay, so in the film, sorry, I have the Wikipedia page up and it says during the Pacific War. Apparently that's just the Pacific part of World War II.
Which is what Japan was involved with.
Yes.
They didn't go to Europe to fight. They fought in the Pacific.
They were in the Pacific, yeah. So he was a child during World War II and his family moved out of Tokyo to keep him safe, basically, to stay safe. And they moved to like a small town. And I don't know all of the details, but that part gets recreated in the film. And in the film, the main character's mother actually dies in the firebombing of Tokyo, and that's why they moved. So it's a very semi-autobiographical film, and it's also kind of about how this young man deals with the loss of his mother. And it is a good film. I just honestly didn't like it as much as I have liked some of his other movies. And, art is subjective. You're going to like different things.
Mm-hmm.
And The Boy and the Heron is kind of less fantastical than a lot of his other films. And I think that might also be why people praised it so much, because a lot of people don't like the fantastical elements.
And I wonder if this is something he needed to get out. He needed a story he needed to tell, to document about his life and about the lives of Japanese during World War II, which was awful. It was just, the French and the Japanese probably had it the worst. And I only say that because I've read books in the last 2 years. I've read a book about the French resistance and how the people of France had to live under the occupation, and how the Japanese, what a struggle it was for them to survive, and Koreans too, Koreans and Japanese during World War II. It was an awful time for them. So that may be a bit of story that he just really needed to tell.
It is kind of interesting to note, and it's not necessarily like a big theme or whatever, but multiple of Miyazaki's films feature a kid who has to move somewhere. This
good
one,
point. Good
The
observation.
Boy and the Heron, Kiki's Delivery Service. Kiki's Delivery Service is kind of the weirdest thing because her parents aren't moving with her. And actually that's also, Kiki's Delivery Service is the only one where the character is really excited to move. She like kind of can't wait for her time to go and be by herself. But yeah, that's just a thing that I've noticed is that.
Well, no, it's interesting because I was completely convinced when she knocked her head in the car, and the whole Wizard of Oz thing, having a dream, falling asleep, and that this was her way of working, the whole story was her way of working through having to move into a new home and a new community. That's never hard. That's never easy.
Yeah.
And especially not easy on children who may see every moment as being the most important moment, and so if you have to move and make new friends, and it can be catastrophic for kids, and he had to do it as a child for a truly catastrophic reason. So
and that clearly stuck with him.
Well, that, dear listeners, is all for today. This has been Woman Inherits the Earth, a discussion podcast about women and movies from the perspective of a mother and daughter.
I'm Tess Adair. You can find me at my website, tessadair.com. That's TESSADAIR.com. Or you can follow me on Threads at author.tess.adair. If you would like to support us, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/womaninheritstheearth. All one word. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe.
And I'm Beth Von Barron. You can sign up for my weekly Substack, Saturday Morning Musings, at stlwriterbeth.substack.com. I'm also on Instagram and Threads at stl_writer_Beth, and on Blue Sky at stlwriterbeth.bsky.social. Thank you for listening. Please join us again in about 2 weeks.